welcome to Artcasters, episode 324. Today will prove to be interesting, at least, I think. We've already got Chase in the chat saying that he definitely relates to today's topic, so that's good.
Yeah.
And I think jumping into the topic might be just as good as doing our introductions, because I think our introductions are part of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Josh, why don't you tell us where we can find the many multiple projects that you have going on at the same time?
Let's see. Awesome. My wife is getting coffee, which I'm excited about. I know this is weird, but you guys, like, for a creative who's juggling a million things, like, I rely heavily on coffee. Anyhow, so you can find my book, Jacob's Apartment, which is a slice of life coming of age story in the vein of Ghost World or Fun Home, that talks about two young 20-somethings who are basically struggling with retaining their sense of identity and idealism in the face of the death of a loved one and the breakup of, like, a relationship. And it has dreams and reality kind of interweaving and stuff like that. And it should be really cool. I'm really excited about it. I like literary comics, and I'm glad there was a publisher like Graphic Mundi who was willing to put it up. And I also want to say congrats to everybody. There's two books that Graphic Mundi put out this last season that are up for Eisner's.
Oh,
which
cool.
Awesome.
Makes me really happy. And then also, I just wanted to also throw a shout out to our previous guest, Dave Baker, because him and Nicole got nominated for an Eisner as
great.
well, which is huge. So anyhow, that's two really cool little side things. And then also there's my autobiographic novel, Two Stories, which you can get at Amazon.com. So those are my wares. Oh, and if you're in Toronto, sorry to mention this, but I know we have listeners on the East Coast. If you're near Toronto or in pretty much anywhere near that area, I'm going to be at Toronto Comics Festival all 3 days at the Graphic Mundi booth. It sounds like I'll be doing a panel, which I think will have something to do with dealing with grief in comics and, like, mental illness, and as well as, like, neurodiversity, which I'm like, my publisher was like, is that a topic you might want to be on a panel for? And I was like, yeah. Like,
Yes.
You wrote a whole book about depression. Would you like to be on that? So anyhow, come check it out and meet me and pick up a copy of Jacob's Apartment, or just get comics signed or a sketch or something like that. I'll be there all those days, and that's pretty much my wares. Right to you, Scott. Where can everybody find your stuff, dude?
You can find my stuff at circworks.com. You can also find me on my YouTube channel. Just search Circworks on YouTube, SERKWORKS. Tons of stuff, tons of videos on there on just making art and how to make a living in art and all that stuff. And then you can find my comic book, the first 4 issues of my comic, on my website at circworks.com. And pretty soon, issue 5 will be coming to Kickstarter. I'm thinking hopefully in July is when I plan on launching that. So definitely check that out. And next weekend, Memorial Day weekend, I will be at Phoenix Fan Fusion, formerly Phoenix Comic Con. So come out and see me. I'll be at the Surprise Comics booth. I'll be signing and doing remarks and stuff like that. In and out kind of throughout that whole weekend. I'll be there sometimes, and sometimes I'll be walking around checking things out or going to panels and stuff. So it should be kind of laid back.
Hell yeah. When is that?
Memorial Day weekend. So not this coming weekend, not this weekend, but the following weekend.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is when I'll be there.
Hell yeah. Yeah, dude. Very cool.
Cool. And you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. There's lots of stuff on there, and so go check that out. Yeah, so Scott and I were talking earlier. I was trying to get a bunch of guests, and I had several people that are very interested in being on the show, and the schedules didn't work out. And he was like, "Should we just do a Q&A?" And I was like, I kind of was craving the old school where we used to the three of us would just tackle a topic.
Yeah.
And anyway, so the topic, I guess I'll kick this off. We were struggling to kind of name it, but I spent so I've got a day job, and then I come home, do family stuff, and then in the evenings after I put everybody to bed and everything, then I do like my personal stuff, right? Pretty basic, same kind of situation that Josh is in, and Scott is there, except you're mixing personal stuff not with a day job, but with your own work as well, and so kind of all in the same boat. But I feel like for the last couple months for me, it's been different than it normally has been, because I spent the first 3 months of the year like busting my butt to get all of this animation done for this animated short film that has literally 2 scenes in it that are live action. And I have spent the last 2 months trying to shoot those 2 scenes. And it is May. And in May alone, I have been snowed out twice. And even in Idaho where I am, that's some really bizarre. And it'll be like the one day in the week where like I can get my camera crew and my audio guy and my actress and my extras and the everything and the lighting, and I check out all the equipment and we plan, and it takes all this effort to like get the scheduling going and everything. And then we go, and that is the only day that week that it snows. And it's like, so we kind of wait. We push it off until the afternoon, maybe. I rearrange my schedule to see if maybe the snow will melt. And then it doesn't. And that has happened 3 times. Then last week when we went to shoot, we were like, all right. So Christian Mollum, who's been on the show, he's the English guy. He makes incredible films. I mean, the guy is so good. And he's my DP for this. And he's like, hey, let's go out and scout our location for the shoot this afternoon. And so we went out in the morning, and it was literally so windy that we could hardly hear each other.
Yeah.
And like our actress has long hair. And so like it would have been just comically bad to like shoot in that wind. And the wind has happened and canceled 2 shoots. And so in the past 2 months, trying to schedule all of the garbage that I have to schedule, I have not been able to finish this project. And I've had 5 different shooting days where everything has gotten canceled at the last minute. And I don't know how to express like how annoying that is because of like the amount of preparation that goes into it. But then also, in the meantime, I was like, all right, I'm going to take a page out of Josh's book, and I'm going to be like, all right, so in this downtime where I have zero control over what's going on in this one project, I'm going to start another project. And so I started working on this project, and that has been great, except I just really haven't had like the mental energy to be able to like do this like project switching all the time. And so this like hurry up and wait. And then on top of that, it's like a really heavy semester. And now that my daughter is 12, like she's requiring like pre-nature attention. And then my son is 3 and he's requiring all, and so like just everywhere. And then for the last like 3 weeks, I got some kind of cold. I've like tested negative for COVID multiple times, but I've been on a steroid and antibiotic and all this stuff. And so it's just like, oh, and our kitchen, which blew up last year and like spilled over into everything, like I am trying to finish putting all the finishing touches on that. And so we went down to the local custom people who build shelves or whatever, because we're almost done except for these shelves. And so I was like, great, let's just buy some shelves. Well, we get a quote, and the quote for 3 shelves was like more than I paid for my first 3 cars combined, which isn't saying a lot because I bought cheap crappy cars for a long time, but also that's a lot for some wood. And I'm talking floating shelves, anyway. So then, because I'm cheap and stupid and I still operate as if I was like as impoverished as I was as a kid, I was like, yeah, there's just no possible way that I'm paying 4 figures for shelves. And so then I spent all of the time and research figuring out how to do floating shelves myself. And I have welded things and borrowed people's table saws and driven all over the planet to try to get all the. And so I've ended up being able to do it for about 40% of the cost that I was charged. I don't know if it's worth it because of all the time that I put in, but I didn't have to pay that to somebody else or something. I don't know. Anyway, so all of this is just to say, like, this sounds like I'm just complaining at this point, which I probably am. But what's been interesting to me is normally in most situations, I would be able to like throw on some headphones, put on an audiobook, or just turn Spotify on and just like make stuff. But this is the first time in years where I've been trying to do that, and I've been able to get like 2 pages penciled, but it's been like 3 weeks, and 2 pages penciled in 3 weeks is extremely slow for me. And so just mentally, I'm just like, I just want to talk about this with my art buddies who may have something. I don't know. And I don't know if I'm looking for advice or commiseration or just like whatever, but like not finishing projects is driving me nuts. Like it's like all of the build. It's almost like a comedian that never delivers a punchline. It's just all of this buildup and all of this setup, and then like the cable goes out and you don't get to hear the end of the joke. And like, I know that has happened to me multiple times, and because of the way my brain works, I still don't know the end of that story. Like there are things that have, like I remember taking notes on like stuff that was due in like 4th grade. I can still see my planner in 4th grade in my mind where I wrote down a note of something that was due. And then when I went to go do that thing, I didn't remember what that note meant. And I still remember everything about that. I have no idea what I missed. It's just this unfinished loop in my life that I will never get rid of further. I will die at 140 years old, still wondering what that assignment was in 4th grade. And so like not being able to finish all of this stuff, I just have so many projects that are just like outside of my control. And then the projects that are inside of my control, I just don't have the mental energy to be able to like focus on them long. Like it's like I can't draw any more pages because I literally don't have a main character. Like I have an idea for this comic, and I think it's a really good comic. But like I don't even know how it ends or who my characters are. It's all set up at this point. And so basically everything in the last month has been all set up and no payoff. Those are my thoughts. That's my rant on things. And if people are wondering if my fingernails are really dirty or not, because I'm seeing them in the camera, I forgot to put gloves on when I stained the stupid effing shelves. And so I can't like scrub the stain out from under my fingernails. And that also is driving me nuts because I spent like 20 minutes trying to clean my hands and they're still dirty. And I'm just going to look like a hobo for about 3 days while my skin is stained. So I don't know where to go with that. That's that.
Well, so I have one thing, which is there's a really bad joke that I'm going to tell. That anytime somebody says "driving me nuts," I think about it. But it's like there's a.
Please have a punchline to this joke, or
this is the pirate, right? Is this the pirate?
There's a pirate with a steering wheel attached to his junk, and somebody comes by and goes, Why do you have a steering wheel attached to your junk? And he says, "Arr, it drives me nuts." And now, anytime somebody says "drives me nuts," I think of a pirate with the steering wheel going, "Arr, it drives me nuts."
Yep.
That was it. That's where I went with that.
Well, I'm glad that at least there was a punchline.
Thank you guys. I know that was the best advice and understandable.
Well, and I don't
stuff
even
you'll
know if
hear.
I don't even know if I'm looking for advice. I
I don't
I'm
think
looking
you
for
are.
advice. Yeah.
In more seriousness, I kind of think what you're describing is sort of like the process of making art.
But the process of
And
making
that
art
it's
for me
frustrating.
is usually significantly less frustrating than this. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel in the same thing, kind of in that it's different circumstances, but
About the pirate joke?
no, not about the your abbreviated version of the pirate joke. It's
Don't
so,
encourage him to make it longer. It doesn't make it better.
well, you got, and I'm the worst joke teller, so I shouldn't be saying anything. But
No,
there's
he's
a
got a
little more,
point. You got to
there's a
play it
little more
up.
setup than just that. But so yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, I'm kind of in the same thing where I've got all these projects, and I just feel some of it's like a motivation thing. I mean, I've got this Kickstarter in the background. I've got these two big projects. One of them, which I'll get into, is it rings true, or it kind of lines up with some of the stuff that you were saying when we were setting up the idea for this. But I'll get into that later. But because it's currently on hold. So I've got these big projects, and then but I really want to make time, one, for my Kickstarter to start getting that ready, and two, for trying to get this studio built. I've got this idea of building this new studio, and I've just like made zero progress, and it's like, but in some ways I don't feel like I'm accomplishing that much with the other stuff. I don't know. And I like, where's the time going? Is it just motivation? And then I see Josh, working all hours of the night. I'm like, oh, should I be, staying up later and working on this? Or do I need to work smarter and not harder? And what does that look like? But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I've taken like baby steps. Like yesterday I went out and bought like primer, because I have these panels that I'm going to put up in this for the studio that I can kind of move around and make different, kind of like a sort of a movable set, like a portable type thing. And so I went out and bought primer so I can prime this wood, so I could start cutting it and painting it and everything. And I was all like, oh, okay, I've got a little extra time, because this one project that I had was taking up a lot of time, got put on hold. And just through the transformational leadership that I've been involved in, you always kind of look at the opportunity, like if there's something that happens that's that kind of you feel is out of your control or whatever, you kind of look at it like, okay, well, this happened. How do I kind of make the best of it? What do I do? And I'm like, okay, well, I've got some extra free time, and I've got these other things that I've been putting off. And so I figure, okay, I'll have time to work on my studio and work a little bit on the Kickstarter. And I've done a little bit of work on it, but I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like I lost a little bit of my mojo or something. Is that how you're feeling, Corey? Or
yeah. I mean, I just feel like normally in most situations I've gotten to the point, and it's been years of work to get to this point where I can sit down and do the work. I can be like, all right.
And we preach, us three preach that stuff all the time. I mean, Josh is kind of doing it right now. He doesn't have much of a choice, but
I'm not convinced that Josh is human, though. I really think like he has. There's like 3 Joshes, like 2 of them live in a closet and they like rotate each other out or something. I don't know.
No, I mean, I relate so much to what you're talking about, because even in the thick of it, I mean, everybody kind of knows what I'm juggling now, but it's like I have to do 230 graphic novel pages in like 365 days. And meanwhile, I'll also try to promote a book that's coming out next month. And then also, I'm supposed to finish part 2 of 2 stories, which is like another 130 pages, which I got 20 pages done, I think, of. So I'm like juggling a ton, and it feels like if I blink, I lose time and I'm behind.
Yeah.
And like I got sick, and then it's like I lost a week. The 1 year I can't lose a week, right?
Right.
It's like this very constant. It's this constant thing of like honestly constant frustration because I want to be perfect at everything, and I'm not, and I fail at a lot of things. So even if I'm doing well at my comic, you know, I like today's a good example. It's like today was crazy at work. I had to work overtime. Because I had to work overtime, I got home. I missed book time with my son, which I like never miss, so that I could nap, so that I don't get more sick because I have to stay up till 2 a.m. drawing comics. But here's the weird thing: is like, so anyhow, I guess the part is, I guess I'm in that weird season where I just don't have time to like I can't even afford to like second guess or have moments where I'm like, am I spending my time right? Because I just don't have time. So I inevitably am not spending my time right, because anytime I'm spending not doing comics, I'm not doing right. I don't know. It's weird. I guess I was just saying like I relate, because I feel like there's like these seasons of art, and yet I also do, because I'm working on these long form projects, I definitely relate with I think the process of making like, sorry for rambling, but I'm kind of thinking out loud about your topic. I think the process of making a big long form project like a graphic novel is a lot of feeling like you're walking backwards on an escalator.
Yeah,
That's you're still
putting forth the effort.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not like you're standing still, but you're working really hard to be not moving forward.
Yeah, and you feel like every graphic novel I've done, and this is like my third, I guess. So it's like I've never been able to like I've never, until it's totally done. I never get that moment of like total bliss over what I did, because the second I finish a page, I have like a fleeting moment of like woohoo, and then the doom, creeps in of like the looming just insanity of the project. And at that point, I've just trained myself to just shut it off, because otherwise it does feel like I'm not making any progress at all.
Yeah,
and I'm just kind of working, and whatever I do isn't enough,
And I can do that normally.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that I jumped into a project where I had to write.
Yeah, so now you have to like stop and think and change, and you're changing gears, Corey. That's part of it too.
Yeah, and I feel like I changed gears pretty well, because the art came quickly, and I have these 2 pages. There's a third page that hopefully I'll get started on tonight, but there's a third page in my mind. So I have these 2 pages like in my mind and like how I want to lay them out and everything. And so I was like, I'm just going to do it. Because normally when I get stuck, what my remedy is find something that you can do immediately and do it without question. And I did that, and I got 2 pages into this and realized that was helpful, because at least I moved forward a little bit, but I still haven't written the story, and I still don't have like my major plot points, or I can't even fly by the seat of my pants, because like there's nothing at this point. I've got like the basics of it.
Like you need pants, basically.
I need pants. Yeah, I can't fly by the seat of my pants because I'm naked. That's kind of But so anyway, yeah, it's just a weird thing that I like normally would go into like something that I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but something super low stakes with very little thinking, like a sticker stint, or something where I just like, let's just make a bunch of little things all at once. But instead, I've been really kind of jonesing to get back into comics for a while now. And and I've been telling myself, hey, like right after this short film, let's do a comic. And I've been kicking around some ideas. And so I was like, well, it's not after, and it's driving me nuts to not do anything.
Yeah.
But I'll do this. And as soon as I started doing that, I realized like I don't have the writing, but writing for me is so mentally taxing. It's like inking and penciling and stuff like that is kind of like a flow state. It's like a Zen meditative process, some of that stuff. Like some of the thumbnailing and problem solving visually is more taxing, but like for the most part, you're having a good time. Whereas writing is like, it's like math for me, a lot of it. And like, I don't have it in me to sit down and do math right now.
Yeah. No, and it does require like different conditions too, and different focus, right? Because like a good example, like if I'm like out in the living room and I'm like just drawing, like my kid can be running around, people can be talking. It's like it's not insanely distracting. But if I'm like trying to write, it's like, man, like how do you get that like moment? Because you definitely like writing, you have to have those moments where you're like alone and isolated and like there's quiet and your imagination can kind of flow, and like it's just a different beast.
Yeah.
Which is I'd imagine hard with like a 3-year-old and a preteen.
Yeah.
To get that state. Yeah, it's nuts.
And my baby, which she has now gotten to the age where she's like able to hurt herself, like she's like 1. And so she's like mobile enough to like fall down the stairs, or if I leave the door open, crawl outside and go play with all the grill stuff or whatever. Like, and so like, there's always.
So she's on the lookout for basically like murder devices.
Yeah. So that like, whenever I'm home and the kids are awake, there is a portion of any parent's brain that is occupied by trying to keep them from hurting themselves or the house or each other, and it's like, if you don't do that, then they're going to use the lawnmower to chase the cat, like it's just, they're going to do the thing that's going to be like the worst possible thing.
No, I mean, there's a reason there are outlet covers. Like for anybody who doesn't have kids, it's like the second you have a kid over of a certain age, or you have a kid, it's like they instantly start finding the outlets and their fingers start going right to them. And you're like, wait, what? Like, why would you, like, of everything in the house, it's the one thing you just went right to it, huh?
And they will crawl past a dozen really interesting toys.
Yes.
To find the penny and stick it in the light socket.
Yeah. Where is the knife in the house? Oh, okay, they're going right for it.
Right.
They're like a murderer in a TV series, who's just gonna find that in to find the device. Yeah, that's craziness, man. Yeah, I don't know.
So Scott, you were saying like part of what you're experiencing is kind of this hurry up and wait. So how are you dealing with like, how do you mentally, because it's really hard for me when I'm doing client work or when I'm at work or when I'm doing personal stuff. It's really difficult for me to like ramp up and then be told like that I've got to wait for the payoff, like getting ready for stuff. Like I mentally charge for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like to have that charge just be like, yeah, hold that for an indefinite amount of time.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, okay, so here this is a perfect. That's a perfect segue to a situation with one of these big projects. The one I've been talking about, this comic book that I'm working on for it's Department of Health and Human Services is the end client, and I'm working. I'm working with somebody who's kind of a cybersecurity expert. It's a cybersecurity type theme thing for hospitals and patient safety and stuff like that, as far as how it relates to getting hacked and cybersecurity, like wreaking havoc on like a hospital setting or something like that. So I'm working with my client who's talking to the government agency, and I'm like, okay, and to this point we don't really have a fully approved script, although we're working on pages because there's a hard deadline that apparently can't be moved or anything like that. So it's like, hurry up, but we can't, we're not going to give you the information you need. And it's a government agency, which is there's red tape and notorious. It's just notorious for being slow moving and stuff. And of course they've got other priorities, because when there's like a ransomware attack or something like that, that sets priority over a comic book that's being developed. But it's just kind of, in my mind, it's kind of like been this nightmare, and all the time, my client is assuring me, no, we don't. It's this is different than whatever. I'm like, this is a government agency. It's going to be slow. They're dragging their feet. We have to get moving on these pages and everything. He's like, this is a different situation. I'm talking to one guy right now, and he can overwrite everything and all this stuff. And long story short, so I'm going this whole time, like, anytime they're, they say they're going to get something approved and they don't, and I'm like, and I'm visibly frustrated, and I'm like, okay, I'll trust you on this and everything. You've been working with these, and then just last week, it's like, and I'm sorry, I was going to make this long story short, but I got to inject some of this. So and I'm organizing this team. I got the penciler working. I'm trying to get the letterer lined up, but the letterer can't start until the other stuff. The idea was, okay, if they're going to make changes, we're hoping that they're just going to make changes to the dialogue, because that we can change. The story elements a little harder to change once artwork's been started. So, I'm like, okay, let's get this script approved so we can get the letterer started. Meanwhile, penciler's turning in pages, getting the colorist and working on pages, and the colorist is moving a little slower than what I would like. I mean, I'm like, okay, the penciler is giving me on average a page a day, and the color is not doing that. I'm like, so I just emailed this beginning of this week. I just emailed everyone. Let's get this thing. Here's where we are and everything. And I'm like, I told the colorist, I said, look, are you going to be able to finish this? Because we only have so many days left, and unless you do about a page a day, we're not going to make this deadline. So I'm like, do I need to hire another colorist to pick up the slack? All this stuff. So I get done telling them that, and then I get this. Okay, the client calls me and it's like, okay, there's a stop order on this whole project. We got to stop right now, because apparently, unbeknownst to my contact and whatever he was being told, that it does have to go through all these channels and all this stuff, which didn't surprise me. But then I'm like, back to like the leadership training that I go through, it trains you that, that you're sort of responsible and you create situations. Like, so what did I do to create this? And I'm like, oh, I haven't been trusting in the process. I've been fighting this whole time, saying, no, this is a government agency. It's not going to go that smoothly. And of course, that's what I created, and that's what ended up happening. So that's where I am right now. But it's that, it's that hurry up and wait. It's like, we're trying to get things moving, and then it's stopped,
Yeah.
And I don't know how long it's going to take, and hopefully it's going to continue and we'll get back on track, because the stuff that we've been doing so far is just awesome. Every time I was getting the pencils back, I'm like, oh man, this stuff's great. So but I don't know. I don't know how long it takes, and I don't know if they're going to come back and say, "Okay, let's go," and like a week from when that. I mean, there's just no way at this point to meet that original deadline. I mean, we were really pushing it at the time, so
Right.
that's where I am right now. So, in answer to Corey's earlier question, what do I do in a situation like that? Well, first I was just like, and I don't want to be like, I told you so. So I'm just like, because my client was like, you were right on this one. I should have listened. You were right on this one. And he's like, apologize. And I'm like, I don't want to be right about this. So
I was hoping to be wrong.
Yeah, I want to be wrong. But anyway, so at that point, I'm just like, okay, I have to first reach back to this colorist that I just said, you gotta speed up the pace, man. You're not pulling your weight, and
Right.
tell them, okay, stop what you're doing. You can't. We have to stop and everything. And the same thing with the penciler. I mean, it's just. I mean, she's been really working hard and giving like just gold. And so I'm thinking, okay, well now I guess what can I do other than wait? So now I guess I have some more free time so I can work on this other stuff. And that's kind of where the frustration came in, because I figured I should be able to get more done. And it's like different things come up. And this is kind of like with Corey with the cabinets. I've been battling ants, like I've tried techniques I've used to get rid of ants in the past have worked, and I pull out there in my pantry, I pull all the food out and everything, and then I read up on how to, because it's around food, so I can't just spray ant spray and stuff in there. So I'm looking for like safe things to use. I did that, and then the ants kind of go away, and I'm like, okay, put the food back in. Next thing they know, there's ants all over again. So these are I guess first world problems, but it's just like these little things that keep popping up. It's like, I could have been working on this, and now I've got to deal with this situation. So I don't know. It's like, but the other thing that I was like, okay, well, I've got this illustrator who's working on this project that I really like, and she can't really continue right now. I'm like, well. And before I was thinking, I really like to have her do a variant cover for Young and the Dead, and same thing with Corey. I still want to talk to you about that. And I thought, well, before I was like, oh, I can't really ask her because there's no time, because she's got this deadline, there won't be time for it. And I'm like, well, I guess there's time now. So I'm, figured, well, this is an opportunity to talk to her about doing a variant cover.
Yeah.
So just like, how can I look at this positively, and what can I do? Because I can't really tell the government, okay, speed it up.
Stop being the government.
Yeah, stop being the government.
I think what you're describing is really good, though, because like the book I'm on right now actually is a result of that exact thing, where there was like this brief period of time where like 2 stories, book 1 was out of my hands. It was like, I think at the publisher at the time. And then I used that opportunity within like a few weeks to like, I made and then the pandemic had hit. So I was like briefly out of work for like a week or something, almost out of work, working from home with like a bunch of extra time, and extra time I would have killed for on the project that I had already sent out. So I used those few weeks to like kind of pitch to pitch Jacob's apartment. And then once Jacob's apartment was traveling around, I also built some pitch pages for another book just so that could be traveling around too. And that was like a process of like 2 or 3 weeks. Then I got back to 2 stories, book 2. And then like, that's what led to like the two book deals, So, yeah. But that was all like a moment of having a window.
Yeah.
But it is hard when you have that window if you don't have something to jump to. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, and it's something that I think our audience just can learn from this is just when you do have, when something like that does present itself, just definitely look for, okay, this is this is happening. Where's the opportunity here? What can I do? How can I use this to my advantage type of thing? So
Yeah.
yeah,
What you're describing is so key to art direction too. Like as an art director, I mean, almost every art director I've met, it's like half your job is just crisis management.
Mhm.
Like you're dealing with constant interruptions. You're leading huge projects that derail or shift or like something else comes through. And there's like a flow state you kind of have to get into, as well as honestly frustration. I think like the majority of art directors usually last about 3 years. I think that's like the job expectancy for an art director. Because it's like crazy stress to deal with like navigating so many changing waters and like trying to lead people through that frustration too of like shifting gears and like different priorities and things shifting. And exactly what you said, Scott, like finding like when a crisis comes up, the hard part, but the part that it's the true north, but it's easy to lose sight of it, is the fact that there is crisis and opportunity quite often, crisis. Sorry, opportunity and crisis.
I agree. I think there is crisis and opportunity. Yeah.
Well, I agree with that too. Actually, they're both correct. So the weird thing is, like, opportunity leads to chaos for sure. Like this is like a good example. Like the book deals I just signed have not made my life easier.
Yeah.
My life's chaos right now. I'm constantly busy. I have no time. That was my reward for doing, extra stuff. But the weird thing is, like, when chaos happens, like if today I had to put this book on pause, like I have like 4 other things that I could switch gears to. But I don't know what you do. This is where I want to tie it back to Corey and also hear more from Scott. But it's like, I don't know what you do when that trigger doesn't work. Because like you described, Corey, I've trained myself throughout the years to just do that automatically. So like right now, if I envision like 1 minute of like not having work, I have 3 other things I know I could do.
Right. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
I'm the same way because I always have several projects in the back burner as like stopgaps. And I had some downtime and immediately jumped to the project that I wanted to do. And it became another thing. instead of being the release valve, it became more pressure in the cylinder.
Yeah. So I think that's the weird thing, though. I don't know if that's bad, but it's frustrating.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's bad or good. It just is what it is. I don't know. It's, I mean, I would still rather be doing this than not doing anything, I mean, yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite place to be. This idea of just, I don't know. You ever feel like you are like just treading water, but like you're so tired that like your ears are under, and you're like, I'm not even treading water where I'm trying to keep like, my chest out of the water. I just need my mouth out of the water. That's it.
Yeah.
Like my head is like fully submerged, and I'm just gonna. I'm like conserving energy enough to like not drown, but I don't care that like I'm like basically under the. It's like that, because that's what I felt like. It's like Jim Gaffigan is like, having 4 kids is like, imagine that you're drowning in a pool and then somebody hands you a baby. And I kind of feel like, yeah, imagine that you've got so much going on and you're not able to finish any of it and take any of it off of your plate. And then, you just like add several more things by way of trying to do that. I don't know. I feel
that's a really good.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good description. I think I was thinking about this today with where I'm at, and then I've been listening to. I also feel like Scott was saying something that I cut off.
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay, so I've been listening to Kendrick Lamar's new album, which is like probably one of the best pieces of hip hop that's happened in like maybe 5 or 6 years. And I was listening to it, and then I was thinking about like the status of somebody at that level in like hip hop, where you're like packing stadiums full of like 100, 200,000 people. And I was realizing like the weird thing about art, right? Not that I'm not there, I'm not Kendrick Lamar, and I'm not anywhere well known in comics, but I was thinking about the guys who do get well known in comics, and like, I don't think their schedule's clear more. Like, I think that when you meet like one of your heroes at a comic convention or animation heroes, you're probably meeting somebody who sleeps less than most people you know. I was thinking about like just Kendrick Lamar, like his press schedule. Can you imagine what that's like on an album release like that? Like a press schedule like that, like to have to deal with fame so that he has to plan his trips to like grocery stores and stuff like that so that he can get out and in quickly without being like mobbed by people. All of the logistics of where he's at in life sound like just a crap load of work.
Yeah, you'd
and
like to
and
think.
The weird thing is, there's all these guys doing music who are trying to get there, and they're working their butt off with the idea of like, when I get there, it's going to be like, that's where I relax and like get a pool or whatever and sit by it. And it's like, I don't know if that's how it works. Anyhow.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd like to think that once you get to that level that you can delegate a lot of stuff, you know, that you've got people taking care of your groceries. You know, you have to really worry about going to the grocery store, you know, as much.
Yeah, but then like you have to manage those people.
Right. Yeah.
And, like, my point is,
or get a manager to manage those people.
I've started to realize, like, I think it gets more and more complex. I was saying this a while ago about Neil Gaiman, where I was saying like, I hate doing press releases, but like Neil Gaiman does interviews all the time. He doesn't have to.
But he's
Neil Gaiman.
But he also specifically has gone out of his way to, like, I was reading. I've read quite a few of his nonfiction stuff as well, where he talks about things. He has an entire essay that he's written about how he became somebody that professionally checks emails and writes for fun. And he's like, oh, I got this wrong. And so he just like was like, no, I write professionally, and then occasionally I check emails. And so yeah, I do think there is a point where you just, because you could. This is kind of the urgent versus important thing.
Yeah.
This would probably be good for this topic. So one of the things that I've learned, I learned this about 8 years ago, is if you don't choose what you're doing with your time, then you'll spend all of your time doing urgent things and you'll never do anything important.
Yeah.
And the difference between urgent and important is that urgent things always seem very important, but rarely are. And important things are the things that matter a year later, whether you do them or not. If you don't do them, it matters a year later that you didn't do it. If you do it, it matters a year later that you didn't do it, or that you did it. And so this idea of like, you know, it's important that I do this work that I'm struggling to do right now. It is urgent that I, you know, get those shelves done, or, you know, that I do things, you know, around the house, or I go to my job every day. Like, it's not to say that you shouldn't do urgent things, because if you ignore enough urgent things, they become negatively important. But like, you have to like carve out that time in your day to do the important things. And I think the frustrating thing for me right now is I'm in that stage of the war of art where you're showing up every day to do the work and you're not getting good results. So you're literally just showing up to fight against the resistance.
Yeah.
So that you don't lose the ability to fight against the resistance. But it's not that I'm producing anything of any value right now. It's important that I'm showing up, because if I don't, I have I've done the 15 years of not doing this. I've been there. And so I could easily do that again. I could be 55 before I touch another comic page or animation if I'm not careful. I could easily see that happening. But at the same time, it's so much harder to do that when you're not getting any results. And by results, I don't mean like outside results where like a publisher is coming after me or people are wanting to buy my stuff or whatever, but just things that I can control, and I'm showing up and trying to control them, and I'm not happy with the work, and the work isn't coming, and the solutions aren't being solved.
Yeah.
And I'm there in the chair doing it.
Yeah.
And I know it'll break. I know for a fact that dam will break at some point in time, and the flood will happen, and I'll get all the inspiration I need and all this stuff because I'm showing up to do it. And that always happens. But I'm like in that time period where I don't know when or how long I have to push against this rock.
Yeah.
Up this hill. So anyway, I haven't been here for a while, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is for you or for anybody listening and stuff. And also, there's some really funny stuff happening in the chats too. But I think one of the key things also is to try to retain your calm and your trust, and that's really hard to do too. For me, being in the thick of this graphic novel, if I stop and think about what I have to do, I literally will have like a panic attack. And I don't have panic attacks. That's how bad it is. But if I just like, when I have a free moment, just start carving and showing up and stuff like that, like I think, and try to have faith in the process, it sort of works out. But I also would say that too, that can be like I've seen it happen like in-house a million times where like a designer on a big project has that panic moment. And a lot of it has to do with working on a really big project and having done all the due diligence, like you properly back planned it, everything, like you have it mapped out. But then instead of looking at the map or the instructions, you start thinking about the whole journey, and you're like, oh crap, this is like a long distance. I don't know if I can get there. What if I trip? What if I get the wrong thing? And so there's this like also weird thing of like, and this isn't a feeling I've fully been able to tap into, because I definitely have my panic freak out moments, but being able to trust that process, like Corey, what you just described, that's a hard thing to learn how to trust, because you're like saying, like, that like the thing will crack if you keep showing up and stuff like that. But it's like, that's a hard thing to know and have faith in. And like, it's one thing to like say it, but it's another, like, it's hard to do, it's like a conscious, it's almost like the Dory thing where you're just like, just keep swimming. Like, like trying to kind of like keep your eyes forward and like, and move forward, but also like, try to do it consciously enough to where we're not like blindly, kind of moving in the wrong direction. I don't know. I mean, Scott, I think the thing you were talking about from your leadership class just sounds like such a cool take on things, where you're looking at crisis and I don't know about the ownership part. I don't know if I like that. Like, I like the ownership of like taking ownership over your circumstances and trying to find the area where you have control. I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it can get frustrating, because it's like something will happen, and then my girlfriend's like, "Oh, well, how did you create that?" It's like, I don't want to hear that right now, but no, but I mean, it's it has been helpful if you can, when I can lean into that and get it, because other.
Yeah, I guess with the right way of using it, that feels like such a just like guilty process. Like It feels like a guilt driving process.
It's not designed to make you feel guilty. It's designed to make you feel powerful, because it shows that, how powerful you are, that you create the situations around you. And if you have the ability to do that, then you can change things, or you can shift and make any situation that is a bad situation better,
Yeah, that is.
But it's not
when
like,
you put it that way, it's like I 100% can agree with it, because I like that idea of like focusing on. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like focusing on what you can control, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the other stuff is it's like you can't. Even what Corey was describing, it's like, Corey, you can't like force. It's like there's certain parts of that, like you're showing up, you're doing the thing. It's not like magically it can just click, that's the frustrating part. It's like when you sit down to write, it's not like you can do like structures and like what Scott was talking about, take ownership of it, right? Like if you're hitting a block, be like, okay, well, what have I done? Have I done my plot structure? Have I done my story arc? Have I like sat down and done the steps or whatever? But there are times where there's things outside of the steps, and like in a weird way, it's like you almost can't focus on those things because like there's absolutely nothing you can do. Like, good example, I was sick like all last week, and it's like I had almost like half a week out of work where I couldn't get out of bed. Or like Corey, you had a motorcycle accident that took you out of commission for like a couple months. I mean, it's like there like, yeah, all you can do in those circumstances, focus on what you can do, because what else can you do? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, what Frank says in this chat, actually, Frank, it is one of the examples they did give us is that, it was COVID, and was like, yeah, how did you create COVID? What in your life led to that? So it does kind of, I know it does get that, it does, it's not just what you're involved in, because it kind of allows you to look at the world and because if you were somewhat responsible for COVID happening, it's just it's hard for me to wrap my head around too, but it just, again, it puts you kind of in a more powerful position, because what can you do to, because if you look at COVID like, okay, yeah, this happened, it's not my problem, it's not, it's not my fault, it's not my problem. If you put that ownership on other people, then if everyone did that, then how's anything going to get better? So yeah, it's kind of heady, and it's a lot to kind of wrap your head around if you haven't been through the training. And I still struggle with it too, but that was an example that they gave us, like, okay, even things like COVID or anything like that, how did you contribute to that? So.
Well, I mean, how you contribute is a good question to ask, but I don't know, like if I'm at home and some like neighboring country decides to drop a bomb on my house or something,
right?
I like to think that that's not my own.
Yeah, well, for like COVID, it's like for instance, when I thought about that, like, how am I responsible? Because like
Frank said, never mind, Josh. I guess COVID is your fault.
I think one of the changes that a lot of people make now, because you see people in other countries, when they're sick, they would wear a mask.
Yeah.
We don't, or we haven't in the past really done that. Maybe if we had been doing that along, maybe something like that wouldn't have gone out of control. Like if you got the flu or something, and it's also, the way it's like, my girlfriend, she got sick and she just started this new job. So she had to go in, like, she got 2 days off, and I mean, she didn't really have any sick pay or anything like that. So they wanted her to come back in. And then she was talking with somebody from another country, and like, yeah, we don't do that. If you're sick, you stay home. Yeah. That's an American thing,
That is very
so,
American
I mean,
thing,
it's kind of the society we live in here, is that like, yeah, whatever, you go to, you go to work, it's better to go to work and possibly get other people sick. So, I mean, it's that kind of thing that if maybe we didn't have that, maybe we're contributing to that.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't have, who knows, but.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I like the ownership part of it, and I think it is good to like kind of look for what you can own in a scenario, I just think you'd have to be really careful if you're exercising something like that to not, wind up using it as like a pit to like get guilty and,
Right,
like,
yeah.
But man, like for me, it is helpful for me to kind of realize like, and this just, I don't know if this makes sense, but it's like one of my big tricks with dealing with the kind of too much to do thing is like, I've been, and I want to hear your guys' strategies too. Maybe Corey can touch on some of the strategies of past too to kind of get unstuck, But I feel like the belief that I can is a huge thing too. And I know that's like cliche to say, but it's like I think that when I was taking on this project at first, I kind of was talking to somebody who was being very negative about the whole book and the possibility of it getting done. And I had to kind of quash that conversation. Like I didn't like come at that person or whatever. I was just like, oh, I got to be cautious when I talk to this person about this project because at this point I can't be around people who think it can't happen. Because I have enough of the self-doubt and stuff about stuff. I don't need like 4 people adding to it going, oh, okay, like this thing can't happen. Because I'm taking on a really ambitious project that, I have to believe can happen. If I forget, it's kind of like that runner's mentality where it's like if you're in the middle of a race and you just think like, you know what, I'm not even going to place, like suddenly your gait is going to slow down. You're going to kind of like potentially, like Scott was describing, create your own reality there, right? Where the race is going to get lost because you're just thinking of that as a potential, like as the inevitable conclusion of the thing. So that's another thing that's like helped me with this is just like anytime I have a moment of like, man, is this even going to get done? I'm like, I refocus it to lists, which are huge, to re-strategize and like back planning, and then mainly just like trying to keep positivity during the process because it may not get done, but that's okay. I believe it can. I don't know if that makes sense, but is that like at all similar, Scott, with like you and juggling a million hats? Like what helps you do it? Because you do a lot of juggling too.
I mean, the list definitely helps. I definitely keep a list, but it's, I don't know. The ADHD kind of helps too. Just like it's, I gotta kind of knowing all the things that I have to do and like, okay, I got a little time, I'll work on this, and then I'll shift to this, and then I'll shift to that, and it's a lot of that. But I don't know that I'm the best at multitasking and doing a bunch of projects at once, even though I've done it before. I'm kind of in a place right now where I'm turning away work because I just don't, which I know you are too. I mean, obviously, if somebody comes to you with a project, you're like, I just can't do it right now. I see.
Yeah.
So
it's a weird spot to be in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like kind of like Corey was talking about with the car pricing or whatever. Having spent so many years of my life like being kind of a struggling, relatively not super wealthy, like creative, who like I spent a long time freelancing and stuff, and I built that muscle to like, man, you hustle, and like if you have a free period of time, that's when you're hustling and getting the next job, And if you're getting a million jobs, you still take the next job because it's feast and famine. It's weird to go from that mentality to like trying to go to a priority on things that are, well, it's kind of like Corey was saying too, where it's like the difference between the urgent and the important.
I struggle with that too. And then, it's often, my girlfriend that reminds me that's a scarcity mentality. Like, oh, I can't afford this. Or like right now I'm in a situation where I'm making good money, more money than I have and maybe forever. But I still kind of live like, like that money's going to go away, but I shouldn't be, even though like, because these are contracts and the contracts can expire, or, they could put a stop on this thing and, who knows, maybe they come back and say, yeah, we're just canceling the whole project, but thinking about like that scarcity mentality, if you use an abundance mentality, then it's like, okay, I created this work coming in. I created, the amount of money that I want to bring in every month. Why is there a reason why I can't just continue to do that? So just knowing that, yeah, there's plenty to go around, and that you can continue that, to keep that going, instead of like, oh, I don't know if I can afford that right now or in the future. Like, I know I'm kind of like, well, I know I can afford certain things right now, but I'm like, well, it's probably better for me to put that money aside, and not that I wouldn't do that, because I think that's just smart to do that, but I'm still living, pretty Spartanly, when I could afford to like, do a little more.
Yeah.
But I'm still I
had a very similar, I can't get heavy into the details, but I had a similar moment. And I was talking to somebody because I made a decision that I 2 days later had to kind of apologize for, a professional decision. And it all stemmed from my thing that ties into what Corey was talking about with the kind of like, I grew up kind of poor, and so I naturally haggle. I can't help it. Like if I go to buy a car, if I go to buy a guitar, if I'm going to buy food, I literally am looking for a deal. I'm looking to get, like, if it says like $1,000, I want it for 500. Like whatever it is, I want it cheaper, right? And it's been a benefit to me to have that mindset in life. It saved me some money. It's helped me be wise and frugal and like not waste money and not get ripped off. But also there's times where it's okay to like not haggle because you're not getting ripped off. Like, and it's not necessarily healthy in life to just like proceed forward. Like, where's the angle that I'm getting ripped off here? I don't know if that makes sense, but so I actually had to explain that to somebody. I was explaining to them how, like, when I was a kid, I had Pro Wings and like all the knockoff shoes from Payless, and I hadn't even put that together until about a year ago. That like the one thing I will spend money on is shoes, and I think it might originate from that stupid thing from when I was a kid, and I used to get clowned on for wearing these like poor shoes. But when I do buy shoes, again, I'm like haggling. I'm always looking for a deal, and like it's okay sometimes to just. I'm not saying the scenario wasn't shoes, but it was like one of those scenarios where I was acting that way in a very like scarcity mindset, instead of just thinking like abundantly and looking at things for what they were, for the value, like instead of just thinking value for value kind of scenario. Anyhow, sorry, that just reminded me of that.
I'm still looking for the best deal on things and everything too.
But, which I don't think is bad. It's just there are times to turn that off sometimes. Yeah.
Like one thing I've been really trying to do is like, if we go out to eat, because I'm not the person that goes out to eat quite a lot, but it's like, okay, before I would be just like, I would get the cheapest thing on the menu, and like, now it's just like, okay, no, I can, let me allow myself to enjoy this, and get what I actually want instead of whatever's the cheapest,
Yeah. Corey, is any of this at all tying in? I feel like we're somehow missing the mark.
We may have gotten
Okay.
the weeds a little bit. I don't know. I think it's still good stuff, but
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I wasn't looking for anything out of this conversation. So I mean, it's kind of like in all of this, I think just processing stuff out loud is sometimes helpful. You know, like naming things gives you power over them. And I've just been operating in like this. You know, I'll just like brute force attack my way through this problem. You know, so yeah, it's all good. You know, it's nice. It's nice. I part of this also, like as you're looking at some of this stuff, sometimes it's just nice to know that you're not a crazy person, that everybody else is also struggling with the same thing, you know, or whatever.
Well, because I think we all have this perception. I'll fall prey to this with you guys and with other artists. You know, it's like I think we often can fall very easily into this, like, well, I'm struggling with this, but this guy over here, this guy's got it figured out. You know, like, and it is helpful to kind of talk to people and realize like some of this stuff is just like is part of the whole thing. You know. And then there's just that jerk Frank Salazar who does have everything figured out. Like Frank actually is the one guy who has the whole thing figured out. You guys got to watch out for that Frank guy.
And what Frank is saying is that you should listen to Corey. And I feel like, I do like what Chase is saying. Wealth and prosperity is earned the boring way. I think that is one of the smartest things. Anyway, just as you're talking about money, like, anytime you're looking at like, oh, this one is going to be the one that knocks it out of the park and I'm never going to have to do anything again, you're probably going to get screwed, you know?
Yep.
Like out of that situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's a trope. The whole, if it sounds too good to be true, it is probably too good to be true. That's not a bad thing. I've known artists who've gotten swindled so hardcore by thinking they were getting in on quick money with a client. Never. It's always work.
Oh yeah. Jim said, hello gentlemen, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the show from the beginning. Did you guys reveal who the killer is? In fact, Jim, you've been the killer all along.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a spoiler alert there.
Jim, this is a Dostoevsky novel and you're the killer.
Oh man, but yeah, I don't know. It's all bizarre. I don't know. Well, let me ask you this, guy, because I don't know. I would like either some solidarity or some affirmation that I'm correct. I think I am bizarre in the way that I like unfinished things. Like it's not like I can let him go. Like I really think that things left unfinished like bother me to an extent that like is abnormal. And so I'm kind of curious, like, do normal people, can you just like things that aren't done, can you just move on? Is that possible?
I think a lot of people can, but I think when you're a creative, it's like you have to have something in you that's into finishing complicated projects.
Yeah.
For me, I have to be careful. A good example, I started weeding our backyard like last summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got obsessed with it. I was dedicating like 2 hours a day to it for like 3 months. I think that's part of what messed up my hand.
That's a lot of weeds.
Yeah, well, we live in the desert, and it's a big.
I do too.
But I mean, this was like trying to properly weed them, you know, pull them out like by the root and stuff like that. But there's a crap load of weeds in our. We bought a used house that's got a very old yard that's pretty torched. Anyhow,
that is the weirdest way to describe. You bought a used house, like how many houses other than the one you built from scratch are not used houses?
I guess I should say it was a rental property, so there's a lot of work. Um,
I bought a used house.
a used house is a weird way to say it. Anyhow, but my point is just like I actually had to pull back from that project and also like be okay with kind of like letting a gardener take care of a lot of our yard, because of the fact that I'm a guy who, like, if I am gonna like clean a refrigerator, I'm gonna like pull everything out. I'm gonna perfectly clean the whole thing, like, and I'm gonna keep going until I do it. Like, I can't leave something unfinished, and I can't do stuff halfway. And that's a really hard thing for me. Is like it's hard for me to like dip in and barely do something and then pull out and do something else. I know that about myself. I have to be careful about it. I know it's weird, but even like around the house stuff, because I'll get obsessive about it because I have to finish it. And so I can't like half start something. Whereas I've known plenty of people who can like half start something and are just like fine with it. They're comfortable. They can let it go. I envy that. Scott, are you able to like do a lot of half starts? Because you seem like a guy.
Yeah,
who's like, I'm gonna fabricate the moon, and then like the next day the moon is fabricated. You know.
No. There's a lot of things that I. There's been projects I start, and then I'm like, I don't know if this is as important, or just like a lot. Especially when I was publishing all the books, on Amazon. There's things that I started, and like, and then I was just, that I still haven't got to, and everything. Just a lot of ideas and little projects. But as far as big projects, I don't know. There's usually, if I take on a big project that, I try to finish it, but there's certain times where I just realize that maybe that's not as I'll get along so far along on something, and I realize it's not as important as I thought it was, and I'd rather be working on something else. So, some situations like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm like Q-Tip from Tribe Called Quest. I never half step because I'm not a half stepper. And I just realized I think that line was actually by Fife, so I might have been wrong.
Well, I've heard a variation of that from a number of different rappers. So
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, weird topic, but that's kind of where we're at. So, yeah. So anyway, much like the topic, if we're going to be very meta about this, there's no real conclusion or satisfaction to be had in this episode, and we should end it.
So here's the non-conclusion that's even less satisfying, if I can get there. I think this is the journey of art, and I think the thing that's weird about art and life in general is that if you are caught up and you're content and you're done with the things to do, then you will find things to make yourself busy and make and create things to do. I think it's just human nature. And I think as you do those things and you achieve things along the way, you're literally never going to feel satisfaction. So I think this is that cycle of like, even the act of creating art is very much like an act of like trying to kind of create something that in itself, like the second you set out to do it, you will fail to an extent. Like you're not going to ever fully succeed at an art vision. And that's the weird dog chase that we're in. Like we're the dog chasing its own tail, eternally making art. And I should have said that in a Werner Herzog voice. So the existential dilemma of the artist is like that.
Yeah, I came to this realization years ago. I was talking to somebody, and this is this kind of goes to one of the analogies I was using earlier. But I was talking to a friend of mine about a decade ago, and I was getting frustrated that I never seems to be satisfied. Now this seems really cliche because there's like a whole song in Hamilton about it, or like a theme about whatever. But like I I do think there is like I don't know if it's a personality type or if it's like the result of choosing to live a creative life or what. But I know for myself, I will never be satisfied with anything. Like I have just come to grips with the fact that there's no satisfaction to be had. There's blips where I can celebrate successes, and there's moments that I can celebrate kind of an upswing in the struggle. But ultimately, it's you're never going to be good enough or have produced enough or have as many projects as you want, because that's not the point. But anyway, so it's kind of interesting just to like I'm not seeking satisfaction. I'm not, I like as a very like kind of quasi existential situation, like my fulfillment comes from like the pursuit of the creativity and the production of the creativity. But I know that there's no destination. Like the only destination in this life to be had when it comes to art is like death. Like eventually you're gonna die.
Corey, thank you for going dark with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I love that I don't know, you and I are very comfortable with that as like part of a conversation.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, it's kind of like the age-old thing, the Greek gods envy the humans because the humans are mortal, and so their time is scarce, and so because of the scarcity of their time is valuable, whereas if you're immortal, then your time is infinite, and so nothing really matters because nothing has any consequences. It's that whole idea. And so like, but the goal would be, I don't want to wait to achieve something to be happy. I'd like to be happy now because I'm attempting the thing, I'm happy in the attempt. And then at the end of this life, when I'm dead, hopefully I will have left behind a body of work that some people somewhere remember or care about for a few minutes before everybody else dies too. So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's kind of just an interesting thing to realize that, I'm not seeking happiness. I am happy. And like happiness is not a destination. It's
a warm gun.
Yeah. It's a resolution. It's the realization that that you're happy because you're doing something, not because you've achieved something.
Yeah. And also I mean, I think also just like the idea that, when you seek to make art or make anything, to be aware that like, if you're thinking, I'd say if you're like a young artist or whatever, and you have that thought of like, man, if only I could get a published graphic novel, then I'll be so happy. No, you won't. Like, if that's the thing, that's not going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. But yeah, like that whole process, it's just, as corny as it is, it's like the journey is important.
Right.
Also, understanding that like sometimes the pursuit is about the difficulty. So it's like, to me, I don't know, it also is really fun. Like if in a year from now I can manage to get this book done, I'm going to feel pretty badass. Like I'm not going to feel fully content or happy.
Sure. Well, you can feel
but
happy.
What a cool marathon to run there.
Right.
That's all,
Well, it's kind of like, I like the idea of difficulty being part of the point. Is because like there are significantly easier things to do than comics. Mm-hmm. There are significantly easier things to do than animation.
Yep.
And part of the point is that it's hard. Like I mean, you're going to do the same drawing like at least 3 to 5 times if you're fast, per panel, per page. That's not a quick or efficient thing to do. And you're going to ink it by hand, and you're going to go through and do all this stuff like on paper. It's like I could literally say the words of the story and just tell it to people in a few minutes, but it's going to take a year or more to like get it down on the page.
Yeah.
And I'm literally sacrificing my spine and my arms and my vision. Like I'm spending physical capital that I have on this planet to like do this really difficult and unnecessary thing.
Yeah.
And that is part of it. So it reminds me of one of my favorite advertisements. One of my favorite advertisements, I'll describe it. It's a magazine ad. And it has a guy riding a Harley in the desert. And it's just this big wide angle shot of this desert landscape with a freeway right through the middle and this guy riding a Harley. And the caption is, somewhere a man in a suit is trying to open a small bag of peanuts. And the idea is like, they're both going somewhere, you know, like, but one of them is going to get there in an hour and the other guy is going to take a couple days. And the one guy, the best thing that he's got going for him in his journey is that a stewardess handed him a small bag of peanuts. And the other guy is going to have an experience on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
You know, and it took longer and it's harder and it literally is backbreaking, you know, having done both of those things. Flying is fast and awful, and riding a motorcycle is slow and laborious and painful, and one of the most freaking rad things that you can do.
Until you crash and break all your ribs.
Even then, it's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And here's the thing. That's the thing that I love about it is like, you know, like the fact that it's almost like sometimes we just do impossible stuff as human beings just because.
Yeah.
It's like the Guinness Book of World Records thing. Like, why get a world record in like the world's like biggest donut or something like that?
Right.
It's kind of an awesome challenge to see if you can do it.
Right.
I think there's a huge part of that in the creation of art. And if you're making art that you can easily do, then I would question what you're doing, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, we shouldn't be making art we can just do in our sleep, you know?
Right.
So,
well,
I
think that's something to strive for. I think the more you've been doing this, the easier it gets.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and the more skilled you get. But I think at some point in time, Elon Musk or somebody like him is going to finally develop the like neural brain interface, and people will be able to think things and just make stuff through a thought. You know, like I think a page and the page just comes out. And I still think there is going to be more value in the laborious creation of that than in the 3D printed version of comics. You know, whatever that just like wish fulfillment thing is. I still think there's that. And there's always the story to tell. Like, yep. I know people that have the same injuries as me, you know, where they had the same type of thing and they've got titanium and whatever. And, you know, it's because they like stepped off the curb wrong and fell over. And I literally, you know, I had eight bones broken because I was about to work on some animation and decided to go on a ride on my motorcycle at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
That is so much cooler of a story.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
I will say, if you're going to break bones, like breaking them on a rad motorcycle is a much better story. Yeah,
that's kind of, I mean, I don't know how I'm still alive, but that's kind of been my motto in life always is like, you know, I mean, this body's temporary, and as you know, I might as well do something cool with it. And, you know, it's gotten me into a lot of painful situations that are extremely funny later. And I love telling those stories.
Oh man. Okay. I don't want to keep us going too long, but that does bring up a really cool thing that I think about a lot for myself, especially, and trying to kind of train my mind, is also the fact that like there are some things that are just like totally not supposed to be fun.
Right.
But they're worthwhile.
Yeah.
But they're not fun. Like, and I have an 8-year-old who I totally have to explain this, you know, all the time, because that's the age where you really have to start kind of teaching about like making those bigger choices and making responsible choices and working hard at school, even if you're not feeling like it. All of those like basic lessons, right? Of like the reward of doing the work and diligence and giving it a good shot, whether you succeed or not. And there's value in that, but it's not like some value that's just like, oh, this is fun. This makes me happy. This is so good. It's just value in like the effort in itself. And so like, I feel like there's something about art that's like that, where it's like, art doesn't have to be fun. Like art can be a torturous, horrible journey. And if we're called to do art, we should be doing it. And hopefully, hopefully we don't all have to be Vincent van Goghs when we do it, but still, I don't know why people look at the history of art, including myself, and think that art is just going to be a walk in the park. It's like the history of cartooning. I can't read it and think like, oh, comic books, that'll be fun. Like just look at the history of like the sanity of cartoonists. It's just not, anyhow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we're all going to die broken and crazy anyway, why not make some comics and animations along the way?
Yeah, I want some weird books, man. I want to make some weird books like the weird books that I liked,
Right.
I don't know. We're a weird group of people who don't like watching things from the sidelines,
Yeah.
I think that's something that unites all three of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
There are times when I envy it. I don't know if you guys have that. Like, Scott, do you ever have those moments where you like look at somebody who's like, I'm gonna make a living and go home, swim in the pool, relax, and that's it.
I may be wrong, but I have to think that they are either
dying,
numbing themselves, like doing so much numbing behavior to like get through the day, or they're not all mentally there. Like I can't imagine a situation where I do nothing but like go to work and then come home and then drink a beer and watch TV for 4 hours and go to bed and be satisfied with that situation. Like and I don't know, maybe this could be like a different species, it could be like flamingos trying to understand monkeys. Like I look at that type of person and I'm like, are you okay? Or are you going to like, are you going to like freak out at the mall later or something? Like, is this okay with you? Like blink twice if you want to make something so that you don't go nuts. Like, I don't know. Is it like the Stockholm syndrome of entertainment? Like I've fallen in love with my TV, not realizing that it's my captor. I wonder.
And the question is, of the two, which one has the Stockholm syndrome, us or the one who's consuming?
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know, Scott. I never. So to answer your question, which you didn't ask me, you asked Scott. I have never envied those that numb themselves with entertainment.
Cool. Thank you, Scott. And what about you, Corey?
Sorry. What do you think, Scott? I don't know.
No, you answered my question. I mean, you answered the way I would answer it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
So what's the solution here, you guys? What's the bow?
No, we're going full on meta. There is zero solution. We're leaving this wide open. There's no good advice. There's no solution. Yeah. There is just an unfinished episode.
I did like Jim's quote from Mr. Rogers where he said, in a way, you've already won in this world because you're the only one who can be you. That's a Mr. Rogers quote, which I agree with. And so you're the only person who can trap yourself in your own never-ending cycle of having to create stories that will never translate to your vision.
All right. So where can we see your sad, depressing comics, Josh?
Well, my existentially dreadful comics, 2 stories, which talks about depression, and also talks about the desire to create and control situations from a kid who led an excavation on a playground, a kid named me. So yeah, that's 2 stories, and that's available to purchase right now. And then there's also the slice of life doomed romance comic in the vein of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Ghost World, Jacob's Apartment, which you can get on Graphic Mundi's website and pre-order it. And while you're at it, also check out other stuff on the Graphic Mundi catalog, because they have some really brilliant books, and I feel pretty lucky to be in that roster.
Yep. And they're good stuff. You should check them out. And if you want to see my futile attempts to take down impossible Goliaths of life, you can go watch some of my animations at CoreyKerr.com. And so there's some of those. There's a weird comic up about I don't even know what that one is about. Anyway, the first like 5 or 6 panels are just a slow zoom out of a fly in someone's drink. So you should go read that one, because that's good. And that's all at CoreyKerr.com. Scott, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my work at circworks.com. You can also find my comic there, Young and the Dead. It's Kids versus Zombie Adventure Story. And I will be running a Kickstarter probably in July. So
yes,
I'm going to start talking about that now. So just getting everyone aware of it, because you can never talk about that enough. So just, it's coming. And then other than that, you can find my stuff at my YouTube channel, Circworks on YouTube. I've got a number of different series on making comics. Well, Making Comics 101 is my series on how to make comics. Everything from kind of coming up with your idea to the finished printing, publishing, every step in between. And then there's a bunch of other videos just on how to make a living doing art. You can check that out on my YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
Again, Phoenix Fan Fest. I'll be there not this weekend, but the following weekend. If you happen to be in Phoenix, if you're going there, come find me. I'll be at Surprise Comics booth off and on throughout the weekend. And if you stop by and I'm not there, then stop by again, and maybe I will be. And just tell them you're looking for me.
And if you're not local to Arizona, when you stop by the booth, say surprise.
Yeah.
Because it's not an old joke to me. I'm not from there.
All right.
How do we keep track of this crazy channel? Did we mention that?
Yeah.
Did you guys already go? Everyone else went?
Yeah, you were last.
Okay, sorry.
I did. I put you last in touch.
Okay, yeah. So this show we do, the Artcasters, we do this show pretty much every single week. It rotates from each of our channels. This week it's on Corey's channel. Next week it'll be on my channel. It'll be on Josh's channel, and just keep going back around like that. We usually have a different guest. Today we didn't have a guest, but that's okay, because I think we filled the time pretty well, just us three. But if you want to know who our guest is going to be, when we're going to be on, whose channel, all that stuff, just join our mailing list. There's a link in the description. Click on that, and you will be notified about 30 minutes before we go live. And we don't spam you or anything. The only thing you'll get is that email that just goes out before we're about to go live, just to let you guys know. So definitely sign up for that, and you will be notified.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Frank says, this episode is making me ask, am I making comics wrong? Because I love it, but apparently I shouldn't. You should, and we do as well. All right.
Yeah.
We'll catch you guys next week.